My name is Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders here. Been doing this for quite a while, my entire career, which means about 20 years here. And that's I'm blessed to be able to say that, right? Because I've guided, I don't know, tens of thousands of families kind of through this process. It's a very tough process, right? It's overwhelming, it's confusing, it's your kids and your money. So no kidding, it's you're a little bit on edge here. But it's very rewarding, right? And something that we say every day is that, everybody there is a path to this college experience that doesn't have to be take 10 years off your life and start your kids are starting their lives behind their financial eight ball. You don't get to retire at all, right? Obviously, those horror stories are out there, but it doesn't have to be that way. And we're here to educate everybody on how to make sure the outcomes are what we're all hoping for, right? What we're all looking for, and that's what we do. And Brian's here to as an expert really in the admission space, which I think for most people that are underclassmen, that's kind of the first thing you're thinking about. Usually not the financial piece. So, yeah, so that's a little bit about me, a little bit about what we're about. But Peggy is this is the real fairy godmother of financial aid, like I said, out there in Seattle. And Peggy, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll go around the horn here and get going.
Yeah, I've been doing exclusively this for quite a while. My career started in the financial industry as a financial advisor, financial planner. So planning is kind of at my core. I have twins, and so when they hit high school, I did what probably a lot of you, I know we've got 26s, 27s here. You start thinking about when your kid hits high school, like how does this whole thing work? Maybe even thinking about saving when they were younger, and now it's like, all right, we're getting to game time. And I was shocked at how complicated it was, and then noticed that a lot of people were not really digging in. It was a lot to take in and a lot to figure out, and people just busy lives. They were kind of what I call drifting through it. So I made a slight pivot in my career, started a business, and focused exclusively on this. Met the guys at CAP and beta tested the software. And long story short, ended up here a little bit over 3 years ago. I'm director of education. This is what I do. I'm an educator, educating professionals, you guys. So kudos to everybody for being here and early. Like what we're going to share, what Brian's going to share. You're not early to this. The more you know sooner, the better off you're going to be to make this affordable, to find good academic and personal fit schools like Brian's going to talk about, and just less stress with your child, in your marriage in general. So it's just a win-win. So thanks for being here. And Brian, you want to just say hi and then we will kick it off.
Yeah, thank you, Peg. Again, my name's Brian Ford. Kind of similar to Matt, I've spent my entire career kind of in and around the college admissions process. I've spent time both on the college side, reviewing and reading applications at a few different schools, most notably at Boston University, just here in BU, in Boston, a large, research selective institution. I've read close to 60,000 applications as the first reader, another 100 plus as the second or third reader. And then I've spent the last decade of my career not only working privately with students through College Aid Pro, as well as a little bit before on my own, but then also serving as the director of college counseling at a few different private high schools here in the Boston area. I currently serve as the director of school and college counseling at Boston College High School, which is a private all-boys high school located in Dorchester, Mass, just south of Boston. Premier High School. We're going through it right now with our senior decisions, not only with our seniors at BC High, but obviously with our CAP students. So I'd like to see I've seen everything, or at least I've heard of everything. I've read a lot of really good essays, a lot of not so good essays that we turned into really good essays. And so I'm excited to talk about kind of how to build an original college list tonight.
As Matt shared, we are College Aid Pro. Brian mentioned CAP. Matt's one of the co-founders. This truly is our mission. So to end the student debt crisis by empowering you to shop smarter, and these kind of educational events, they give you the foundation. And then some people are off to the races, 100% DIYers. Most people are going to work with us in different ways so that we can support you on the journey of getting literally to where you're waving goodbye at the dorm. So for some of you, this might be the first time. We're going to give you that foundation, and we'll go from there. There we are. So everybody should have received an email today. Matt is going to put a link in the chat. We see that a bunch of you set up your free MyCap account. If you haven't, strongly encourage you to do that. I'm about to talk about financial aid and how it works, and Matt's going to talk about merit aid. I'm going to talk about need-based aid. If you have it set up, you can have it opened up, watch us on the big screen, but have it open up on your phone or another computer, and you'll be able to actually see your family and what are your SAIs, and are you eligible for need-based aid? Maybe at some schools, maybe not at others. It's hugely powerful. You are a huge leg up just understanding that piece of information. So strongly encourage you to get that set up. Super easy, username and password, answer some onboarding questions. If you don't know all the answers, it's okay, because you can go back in. It's actually encouraged to go back in and change things and see how that affects aid at different schools. You can put in 3 schools and, get going on understanding financial aid and then where your family fits. So that's in the chat. If you haven't done it, click on that. It'll open in another tab and you can go ahead and do that. All right, so let's talk for a few minutes about financial aid. How does it work? I think everybody on this webinar realizes that college is really expensive. It's been going up for decades, literally. I hate to tell you, if you don't realize, the most expensive schools for this coming fall are actually over $100,000 for 1 year. That's crazy for most people to even get their head around from an affordability standpoint. But in a way, kind of doesn't matter, because all these colleges are discounting. And so the key thing for you as a consumer in this process is to understand what we kind of call the business plans of these schools. How are they discounting? Because every family doesn't get the same discount. And I know all of you don't want to pay full sticker price anywhere. Why would you? So let's talk about how these schools are doing it. There's 3 different ways that they can reduce this cost of attendance / sticker price, whatever you want to call it. There's need-based grants, and as the name hints to, you need to have financial need to get those. These can be in the form of federal money, state money. The lion's share of it comes from the colleges, and they're called institutional grants. So you have to have financial need, free money, great bucket. Middle bucket, also free money, but it's the flip side. It's not based on your family's finances. It's based on your child. It's based on their grades, test scores, sports, talents, leadership, whatever that college decides to base it on. Also free money, and merit aid is wonderful because it's almost always offered for 4 years. So when you're setting up that 4-year cash flow that I recommend you do, you can put that $15,000 or $20,000 every year as a discount. And those are typical merit awards. We're talking about a lot of money. Then the third bucket we call self-help. So that's going to be loans. Work study is a need-based program the federal government puts out or makes available. And, we all know what loans are. Loans aren't bad, but reasonable amount of loans, and the right loans can be part of a lot of families' college funding strategy. But of course, you want to maximize these first 2 buckets, because that's the free stuff. Basically, it's coming out of college endowments instead of your portfolio or your savings account. So please, Matt's going to show you this later. The cost of attendance, which is tuition fees, room and board, books, travel, personal expenses, if you know what you're doing, it truly is irrelevant. So let's take a minute to talk about need-based aid, those need-based grants. How do they decide if they're going to give them to you? They take the sticker price and they subtract something called the Student Aid Index, SAI. The old terminology was expected family contribution, EFC, and a group of schools that require the CSS profile, one of the financial aid forms, still calls it that. So I've added it back on the slide. That gets calculated when you submit financial aid forms. So you need to do that for the colleges to have any idea what they think you can afford for 1 year of school. That's what that number is. So they take their costs, say 80,000, they subtract your SAI. So it could be, say, 40,000. And then they say, all right, the Jones family has 40,000 of need. It doesn't stop there. That doesn't mean, okay, great, I'm getting 40,000 of those need-based grants that you just talked about, Peg. Not necessarily. A lot of schools don't meet 100% of need. So it really can differ from school to school what you get. That's what that software that we want you to set up your free account and does. Basically translates all this per school for what we think you're going to get, what kind of discounts, and it shows you a lot of information about the schools in your family. So that's a pretty simple equation. Let's get a little bit in the weeds on how they calculate the SAI/EFC. There's two main buckets. There's assets, and that's going to be the child, the student, as well as the parents. And then income, again, child and parents. So on the asset side, the biggest takeaway is the assets that are assessed are part of this calculation are non-retirement assets. So if you've been a good saver through your employer and you've got a nice big 401k, 403b, you've got some Roth IRAs, that's awesome. Not going to be part of the equation because those are retirement accounts. But pretty much everything else from an investment standpoint, so 529s, CDs, stock, bond portfolio, checking and savings, all of that is going to be on the table. And when it comes to 529s, which is very common that people have, if it's a parent-owned 529, which is the common way that people do it, parent's the owner, your child is the beneficiary, that's an asset of the parents. Key thing, I'll say it again, that's an asset of the parents. The reason why it's so important is it's assessed a little shy of 6% at most versus 20 or 25% if it's a student asset. So that's a key thing to jot down. If you have grandparents that own 529, super common, that's not even going to go on the main financial aid form. Something you can use to pay for college, but they're not part of the household, so you wouldn't include that. If your child has a custodial account, they're typically called UGMA and UTMA, that actually is an asset of your child. And if that means that sounds Greek to you, don't worry about it. You don't have it. There are strategies to move that out of your child's name. That's something we would talk to you one-on-one. You know, we wouldn't make a recommendation, oh, definitely move it. There's tax ramifications. You need to even figure out if it's going to help you. So, but that is a parent asset. I mean, a student asset. Jointly owned accounts with your child, that can be in your name because your name is on it. Real estate is the other piece on assets. Any real estate that's not your primary home that you live in is on the table. The equity in that real estate, meaning market value minus any liens, a mortgage, a HELOC, anything that you have on that property, that's your equity. So if you have a second house or vacant land or a cabin, that's going to be on the table at all schools. The home you live in, we call it the primary home. That is, most schools do not look at that equity, but there's a group of a little bit more than 200, mostly private schools that I'm sure all of you will have at least one of those schools on your child's list. They do look at the primary home. So these are all these different things to understand that we've built in to our calculations and our software. And the key thing with real estate too is that you don't want to overvalue your property. You don't want to lie, but you don't want to overvalue it. So there's some strategies there to make sure that you don't do that. So that's the asset piece. And assets are literally assessed when you hit submit. So if the market's having a down week, you could actually look it up on Friday and you could have lower number of assets. So it's real time. Now, the flip side, like I said, is the income. Income is not real time. It's a 2-year look back. President Obama put this into place. It's called prior year. So you can see on the slide here, I know we have 26 parents, 27 parents, 26 parents. When you get to this, it's going to be all about the tax year that's about to finish. 27 parents, you're not there yet. So it's really important in January, that's the tax year you're going to be reporting on when your child's a senior. You probably have not thought about this at all, that something you're doing in January or February could affect financial aid. And because it's so far ahead, and I get that, but it can. So because they're looking at that year, so make sure you don't create excessive capital gains, take a distribution out of a 401k that you don't need to, because all that stuff is going to come back to haunt you and you might have to appeal and explain it to the colleges. Better to just have your ducks in a row and be knowledgeable ahead of time. It's mostly based on adjusted gross income. There are a few other add-ins, and you can see here for kids, there's a very generous student income allowance. What that means is a student can make 11.5 and it's a wash. And so most kids are not going to produce income higher than that in a given tax year. So it is usually a wash for the FAFSA schools. Not a big indicator unless they're really making tons of money. So some of you and a lot of you have set up your MyCap account. So as I was talking about SAI, you might be looking at it saying, okay, Peg, thanks for that explanation. Our numbers are kind of high up there. And all three of us have seen thousands of families with 6-figure SAIs. But I'm guessing that most of you either can't afford it and or think it's ridiculous to spend $95,000, $100,000 a year on school. So you like to have one of these discounts. Well, that's where we come to that middle bucket I talked about, Merit Aid. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt now to chat about that.
Yeah, awesome. And it bears repeating, right? That some of these more expensive colleges next year, private colleges, are eclipsing that $100,000 sticker price, right? Per year starting next year. But that doesn't mean that, and Peg, if you could just go back one slide. I think, well, no, the other way there, Bucko. There you go. So look at what
Sorry
if I,
about that. I hit the
oh, you're all
mouse
right.
by accident.
You're all good, buddy. Um, what if I'm not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid? And just for some people, like Peg said, there's no magic wand that she can wave, I can wave, anybody can wave. The income's too high, the resources are too much. And again, please do not make assumptions around that. At least confirm it, set up your account and confirm that. But for some of you, it will be confirmed, right? Your SA, you make 800,000 bucks a year, you got 2 million in savings, you own a bunch of properties and businesses. We're not getting need-based financial aid, but we still don't want to pay $100,000 a year. Okay. Or maybe even if we can't afford that, we don't want to, right? How do we get discounts? The biggest, best, kind of most reliable way is merit-based financial aid scholarships. And we'll show you exactly how to identify which colleges are going to give you scholarships and how much you're going to get at those colleges in just a minute here. But a few talking points before I kind of walk you through that. Number one, the second bullet here, some colleges are going to require that you complete the financial aid applications, even if you're not eligible for financial aid, in order to be considered for merit-based scholarships. That's just something that I want you to make that note now if you're a family that fits into this bucket. The other thing here is not every college offers scholarships. And now there's about 100 schools where this is the case, right? Every single Ivy League school, every one of them, there's not one college, Ivy League college, that offers scholarships, right? Nobody at MIT is there on a scholarship. Nobody at Williams or Amherst or Middlebury or Tufts or Bowdoin or Colby, and on and on and on. Each one of those schools I mentioned and many more, scholarships do not exist. So if you're getting a discount at those schools, that means you're getting need-based financial aid, regardless of your talent. So we share this because in our experience, that's not common knowledge, right? So a lot of, especially those of you that have these exceptionally talented kids that have a real opportunity and are going to get into some of these amazing schools, we just want to make you aware, especially if you're not eligible for need-based aid, that they're not going to get a scholarship, again, regardless of their exceptional talents. Okay. The last one here, again, not necessarily the last bullet in this first section here, not necessarily common knowledge, in my opinion. As we're building this list of colleges, we have to apply to competing schools, right? You need to start as you're approaching this process. It's almost like you have to have two hats on here. The one hat is just finding the right fit for your kid and where they're going to thrive, culturally, geographically, academically, all of these things, right? But you also have to understand this is an investment. This is a business transaction. Make no mistake about it. These colleges certainly see it that way, right? These are multi-billion-dollar corporations, right? And don't be fooled by their nonprofit tax filing status. That just means they don't pay taxes, right? And they're very sophisticated, very well run businesses, right? So we need to, and that's okay, right? That's okay. But we just need to adopt that mentality as consumers. And when we do, we're going to be better for it. So a part of that is understanding that these are businesses that compete with one another. The students are the products. We need to use that to our advantage, right? Brian and I mentioned we both live just outside of Boston. If somebody comes, and this happens all the time, this example I'm about to give, matter of fact, happened just recently. They're from out of town. They visit, a bunch of schools here in Boston, and they loved Northeastern. They didn't like BU. So then they come back and they tell us, well, I'm only applying to Northeastern, and BU, the campus was too urban. We're not applying there. We make them apply there, right? Knowing they're having, there's zero intention to go there. We're just going to use that offer from BU, and it's going to help us get a better deal at Northeastern, right? This is especially mission critical if you're not eligible for need-based financial aid. So again, an important part as you're building your list of schools, thinking about affordability. And Peggy, if I could, I'll just share my screen for a couple of minutes before Brian takes over. So here's again, this is most of you are already set up your accounts, which is great. If not in the chat, again, click on that link to set up your accounts here. But your SAIs are going to be staring you in the face. So you heard that term maybe for the first time tonight. The first thing that you need to do is figure out what is your SAI or your SAIs, right? That is the foundation for determining your eligibility for need-based financial aid or lack thereof. More important than that is understanding what these colleges are actually going to cost you. Here it is. Columbia is going to be $100,000 next year. But guess what? This is a Massachusetts resident, this family. It's going to be more affordable than the state flagship university here in Massachusetts. Based on this family situation, based on how generous they are with need-based financial aid. Well, why is Boston College, another really expensive, great, private institution, almost identical sticker prices? Why is BC going to be 13,000 more dollars than Columbia? That's because BC, if you own your home, they basically consider it to be fair game, whereas Columbia does not. So there's so much nuances in here. Every nuance that you can think of, every variable that you can think of, it's all baked into our algorithm. This is going to be the source of truth for you all. This is where you're going to be, where you're going to find out what are these schools actually going to cost me? Where should I be shopping? Again, from an affordability standpoint. And it doesn't, this is just a great example, and this is not an anomaly. This is a kind of your down the fairway average case here, where what appears to be the most expensive school, in fact, will be the most affordable. Now, when we talk about, I guess I'll kind of click on something here. Another thing that's important, any school that I click on, right? For every college in the country, we have every single scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at projecting, how much is your kid actually going to get, right? And there's some context as to the why, etc. But as you're building this list of schools, we want you to go for this into the school search kind of section here, and you can type in any number of filters. I'll just put in a few here, but let's say, we want it to be a 4-year school. We know our kid prefers a smaller setting. They want to be pretty close to home, and maybe they want to major in business, right? And again, we can put in any number of things here, a bio, okay, and I can put in all sorts of things. But once I do, I can search and I can say, okay, just go sort those based on who's going to give my kid the most in scholarship dollars. So this is pretty cool. I mean, maybe Bennington wasn't on the list, but if they're going to give us $40,000 regardless of our income, or Dickinson is going to give us 43, doesn't matter how much I make. Let's take a closer look at that school. If I am eligible for financial aid, I can sort just based on that, right? And okay, it's impossible to get into MIT, but guess what? Here's some other schools that are really, really good with need-based financial aid, and again, maybe a little bit more realistic from an admissions standpoint. So this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of platform, but that, as you guys are building your list of schools, this is where you should be living. How much are these schools going to cost me? What does that look like next to my budget? And then how do I make sure that I'm identifying more opportunities that are going to be, again, great financial fits in addition to the equally important academic piece? Yeah, and I'll turn over to Brian, I think, right, Peggy? I think
It
Yep.
was almost like perfect timing that when it was my turn to talk, a question about test optional came to the chat. So I'll save that for the end, but don't worry, I'll get to that question. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of building a list with balance and keeping in mind that I'm going to talk about this in the very general of terms. But when it comes to working with an individual student, the process is going to be unique and different and really should be in that way. How we work with our students here at CAP is we really get to know them first, get to know who they are as a student, what are they excited about, what are their wants, some of their needs, some of their must-haves, and then we kind of dive into, who are they as a student and as a person and how will they fit. But there's a number of things that play into that balance. There's, first of all, why you're going to college in the first place is the academics, is to better yourself academically, better yourself as a person. And so do schools fit that narrative of what you're looking for? There's obviously the financial piece, which we've talked about a lot tonight. So I won't harp on it too much, but obviously we know that that's a big part of it. Application deadlines and the strategy surrounding what deadline is the right deadline to apply for, depending on what school, and how should you apply to those deadlines. So should you apply test optional, and what does that go along with that? And are there interviews involved, or are there additional supplemental essays? All of those type of items play into that kind of academic deadline. And then there's what I would call the grab bag that we'll go over a second, that is kind of becoming the new normal of college admission. I want to go to the next slide. So when we're looking at that academic balance, the way that we work with it is we take kind of not only a qualitative, but a very quantitative look at where you fit in academically. When I'm looking at historical numbers, college admissions wise, I tend to go 3 to 5 years back. For the last couple of years, I've been saying a little bit less with everything else that was affected by the pandemic. College admissions obviously was as well. And so trends previous to 2020 aren't really reasonable to look at when you're looking at college admissions statistics. But right now, we're at a place where we can kind of look at 2021 forward and gain some perspective of, okay, how competitive was that school during that year? What were they looking in terms of admissions numbers? Did they meet their yield number? Things like that. When I'm looking at a student and trying to decide whether a particular school might be a target, a safety, or reach, or a high reach, I'm looking where does the student fall within the averages of that school's accepted rate. Now, one of the kind of tips that I always tell families, and it's very simple, but it kind of stands out, is when you go to visit a school, you shouldn't ask a school what their average GPA or average SAT score is. Because what that is that's one solo number amongst thousands and thousands of pieces of data. And so my last year at BU, we got close to 90,000 applications. And so if you asked for the average GPA, I would say it's about a 3.8. But if you ask me for the middle 50% accepted average GPA, it's probably about a 3.4 to a 3.9. That gives you a much better idea of what is the type of student that's getting admitted into the school, and knowing that there's 25% of students on either side of that. And so if a student falls into that middle 50% averages for GPA and then potentially SAT or ACT scores, and their academic rigor, so meaning the classes that they're taking at their school and how that aligns with the difficulty of classes that were offered at their high school, if that all matches up, then it's a target school. If they're above those averages, then I typically list it as a safety school. If they're below, I typically list it as a reach. Now, just because it's a reach school doesn't mean you don't apply, doesn't mean you're not going to get in. And many times reaches aren't because the student isn't talented or the student isn't smart enough. It's just the natural competitiveness of the school. Schools like Ivy's, some of the schools in the US News and World Top 50, some of the best flagships around the country, like UCal Berkeley or University of Virginia or University of Texas Austin. If you're an out-of-state student applying to those, you have to be kind of realistic. And so that's where, even depending on who you are as a student, what might be a target for an in-state student would be a reach for an out-of-state student. What also might be a target or a reach dependency would be what deadline you're applying. For some of these schools, we're seeing vast differences in deadlines, acceptance rates between early decision and regular decision, but even also early action and regular decision. So if your plan is to apply early action to a school, I may put it as a target. If you decide you don't want to and you're only going to apply regular decision, then that school may be a reach. And these are conversations we're having with students so that they know that they have the best chance to get into the schools that they're interested in. So we've talked a lot about the financial balance, so I won't go too much into it. But obviously, there is somewhat of an understanding as we're going in of gaining, okay, if we're going to apply this school, we have to be realistic of what we're going to get back from this school, even if we do get in. And so when I'm having conversations about families, particularly about their reach schools academically, saying, hey, if we get in, that's fantastic, but we have to be realistic that we're getting into your reach school, the odds of you maybe getting some academic merit from that school are probably pretty low. And so we want to be realistic of what that sticker price might look like. And so where does that then fall in terms of kind of the top of your list or middle of your list? Same goes with safety schools. We want to be realistic of, hey, there may be a lot of money for us within those safety schools because of academic money. And we're trying to find the balance of, well, maybe one of those schools shoots a little bit higher up your list, as Matt showed earlier in the situation of, say, like a Dickinson or something like that, that's going to give you a little more money in the situation of that sample student. Well, maybe they become a little more higher on the list in terms of what we're interested in. Talked a little bit about the deadlines, but it has become such a strategic part of it. There is no longer the situation of, everyone throws in their applications at January 1st and everyone finds out in March and runs to the mailbox and then everyone picks in May. Some schools have upwards of 4, 5, even 6 unique and different deadlines that all come with their different stipulations and restrictions that could limit or enhance your chances of getting into not only there, but also other schools as well. So perfect example would be, say, University of Southern California. They're a very popular school for all students, private institution, one of the top schools in the country, excellent research institution right downtown Los Angeles. Especially where we're going to get a little snow in Boston tonight. Why wouldn't you want to go there? But they are a school that has what's known as restrictive early action. So what this means is you can apply to them early action. It's not a binding agreement like early decision, but it restricts your ability to apply to other schools' early action. So I have a lot of students that maybe want to apply to USC, but maybe also want to apply to school like Northeastern, like Matt was talking about earlier. Northeastern, pretty well known that their admit rate through early action is much different than that of regular decision. Another school like this would be Tulane in Louisiana, very like-minded school. And so by not getting to apply early action to those other 2 schools, you're really limiting your chances to get in. And so you have to have this conversation of what's more important, to apply restrictive early action to USC or the ability to apply early action to Northeastern or Tulane. And so again, these are conversations that we're having with students really in junior year a little bit of saying, hey, these are some of the schools that are on your list. These are some of the deadlines they have, some of the decisions that we're going to have to be making. And then obviously for many students now, early decision has become more popular. 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 1 out of every 5 students I was working with would apply early decision somewhere. Now it's probably 2 out of every 5. And so they're making this binding agreement saying that we're going to attend this school. Now, a lot plays into that. You need to make sure that it is your top choice. You need to make sure it's financially sound. We do a lot of programming on this, and you'll hear us talk about this in a lot of different ways. But it is becoming more of a norm in college admissions in the way of how colleges are setting up their classes, that you need to be realistic. Hey, if I really want to get into this school, early decision is maybe the school way I want to go for this in particular, knowing you can only do that for one school. So this is then the grab bag. All of the other pieces that play into the college admissions process. I joked about the test optional. The test optional movement has certainly turned the college admissions process on its heels. Now, for those who don't realize, the test optional movement has been around a lot longer than COVID. Bowdoin College, right up here in New England in Maine, prides itself on saying it's one of the first schools, if not the first school to ever go test optional, as early as the 1970s. But when COVID happened, all the testing centers shut down and all schools were forced to go test optional in some manner because of students' limited abilities to take the test. Now, many schools have had then to make decisions on what they're going to do. If you look across the board, there's no real unifying decision, even amongst the Ivies. Some schools have reverted back to requiring test scores. Others are staying truly test optional. It's pretty much a mixed bag amongst the U.S. News and World Top 50, and even amongst the flagships throughout the country. There are certain schools that are staying test optional and others that are requiring. There are other schools that have gone so far as to go test blind. The University of California system is certainly the most popular of those. So if you're applying to UCLA or UCal Berkeley or UC San Diego, it doesn't matter if you have a 1600 or 36 on the ACT. You're not getting to send those scores. They don't look at SAT scores no matter what the student is. And so it's keeping that in mind that that's going to play a key role and will continue to play a key role. And we go school by school with every student to make the best decision. So it's not just this blanket, okay, I'm going to send my scores everywhere. I'm going to not send my scores everywhere. It's finding that balance in between. Supplemental essays are another big piece that have come out of COVID. Schools have very much made this kind of decision. Well, because of us taking away test scores, or maybe we want to give students more of an opportunity to speak for themselves. Another reason supplemental essays came out was the affirmative action ruling a couple of years ago. We want to give students an opportunity to speak about who they are and what they can bring to their campus. On the surface, that's fantastic. The difference of that is kids do a lot more writing in the process. So many parents are surprised because they think, well, it's the personal essay. That's all that my kid is writing moving forward. We had students this year, very common, 25, 30, 35 additional essays that they have to write. And they run the gamut in terms of what is being asked. And so that is everything from, look at our mission statement and decide what you feel is the best for you, to tell me what was your favorite cartoon character as a 5-year-old and why it has helped you grow up to the person you are today. So there is this whole variety of essays that students are required to answer that do play a role in the college admissions process. And so this can very much play a role in terms of as you're building your list, because as students start to put certain schools on their list, I'm constantly reminding them, hey, that's 5 essays right there. That's 2 essays right there. That's 3 right there. We're going to have to build a plan. So it not only dictates your list, but then like when we need to get started on these essays, knowing the amount of time that they take and how important they are. There's obviously things like demonstrated interest. For those who don't know what that is, that's the interest that you are showing to schools by either visiting, going to see them when they visit your high school, reaching out to them. Some schools track this, and this plays a role in their decision-making process. And so they're trying to think, okay, well, we want to admit the students that we actually think are going to come to the university. And so naturally, a student that is showing interest in a lot of ways probably has a better chance of yielding than a student that we've never heard from before. And so all of these different pieces are pieces that we talk about, including interviews, honors programs. Obviously, if you're a college athlete, that plays a role, or a prospective student athlete. All of that kind of stuff plays in. We also look at things like the local area. So not only the campus, but what's the surrounding area and how does that play? All of this plays in. So many times when students are building that list, they think, okay, this is my academic major, and these are the 10 to 12 schools that are the best at that major. This is going to be my list. Not realizing there are all of these other factors that can play into the idea of building a college list. And so when I'm working with students, these are kind of those front of the brain characteristics that we talk about. There's the location, there's the size, the campus type. All of this is pretty open in terms of what are they looking for. If you were talking to really about anyone about a college list, many would answer these type of things. And it's not wrong to start here. But if you go to the next slide, you want to ask yourself some deeper questions. And so we talk about things like the location, but what is the external location? What is there to do? Can I get a job somewhere? How welcoming is the external community to the school? I went to a small business school in Rhode Island, and I loved the fact that the community really kind of depended on college students in terms of its local economy. And so they were very welcoming to the students from my campus. That's mostly the case, but it's not always the case. And, are there other campuses right around there? Is that something you want, or do you want kind of your own area? What is the campus layout like? Many people always talk about, oh, well, I just want a big campus. But what does that actually mean to you? I really liked at my smaller school that I could wake up at 7:57, walk the 2 minutes to the academic building, and make my 8 a.m. class. Not every student wants that. And so it's having these type of questions in your grab bag per se, and not just saying, okay, where's the school and how big is it? What is their academic approach? Is this a school? Are you a hands-on kids? Do you want to be in the lab? Do you want to be doing research? Then maybe you want to be looking at a school that you want to make sure does that. You don't want to be in a smaller environment that maybe it's going to be sitting around a Harkness table having those discussions. But maybe you are one of those students that wants to be in that small discussion room with 8 or 9 other students and the professor that knows you're there every day and knows when you're not there every day. I myself knew I was going to be successful in a classroom where the professor knew my name and knew I was going to be there. But I also work with students that are really good independent workers and want to be in those large lecture hall classrooms. These are those questions. And we've talked a lot about, what does testing look like? What are the additional essays? But you want to ask these deeper level questions when you're on those campus tours and not just asking, what's your average class size, but what's also going on in your classroom? Who's teaching those classes? Things like this. And at this point, I'll kick it back to Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. Hopefully that was helpful. And I'm going to walk you through kind of next steps and options here for everybody. But just to, Brian's really unique in the sense that he mentioned it, but he's been on both sides of the desk. So, he's just a wealth of knowledge where we get to tap into and say, look, you've read 60,000 applications. You've been in these meetings with the committees that are looking at 2 applicants. We can only let one in. What does make the difference, right? And now, especially these last couple of years with the Supreme Court rulings, of course, the standard kind of GPA and test scores and your kind of run-of-the-mill, uh, I don't know, resume factors are relevant, but it's so much more now. It's so much more nuanced, and it's these kind of finer details, the essay, how you list the activities in the on the Common App, which making sure that you show fit to major if you want to apply, to the University of Texas and schools like this, right? Those are the difference makers. And so that is just really, really we always learn a lot. So that's why we're just trying to give as much education as possible here as you guys are tackling this thing, because it becomes more complex every single year, it seems, at least in my experience. So let me talk you through your options here, and I'm going to give you the whole gamut. I mean, excuse me, a lot of folks, when they're thinking about how they want to interface with us, we have two broad solutions. Our financial solutions are admission solutions, and most folks are like, I need help with both, and that's what we recommend for most folks. But first, I'm going to start kind of with our more comprehensive packages, what we call our wake me up when it's over packages, where it's just like, let the experts take the wheel here. And again, we have an admissions piece, a financial aid piece, and for some folks, they're looking for help with both. Just a little bit more about our company. We've been around for an awful long time. We get a ton of experience. These are just a couple of logos with folks that are on our team, right? We have the director of financial aid admissions at Harvard, the former director at USC, Brian, formerly of BU. We have the director of scholarships at OU. So we're able to have this kind of hive mentality and tap into all of our collective experience and networks for that matter. Just a couple kind of statistics, some data for us. On average, we save families about $70,000 for college. That is something that's a number that we can stand tall on, and quite frankly, is a little bit conservative. But again, this is something that we can defend with data. So as we talk a lot about ROI here. That is something that we're proud of and able to demonstrate again with any family, regardless of where they are kind of on this spectrum academically or financially. We save folks time, right? Now I don't think a lot of folks hire us for that, but the way that we look at it as go spend the rest of this time with your kid that's going off to college next year or the year after that, or whatever it happens to be. Let us take a lot of this off your plate. And quite frankly, let us be the middleman here. Let us manage this thing. And on average, again, our statistics show the students are 3 times more likely to get into their top choice, right? And again, you know, we can stand tall on that for a reason. So let me get into some of the specifics on deliverables. For the financial aid piece, what we do is our kind of major things that we do is number one, help you build out lists of schools that are going to be affordable and make sure that we're competing with one another. We're going to make sure that we are setting yourselves up to qualify for the maximum amount of financial aid. So how do we lower that SAI? The max amount of scholarships, right? Making sure that we are applying to competing colleges. We do all the financial aid applications for you. We do the FAFSA, we do the CSS profile, we do the institutional applications. We worry about who needs what, where, when, how. The how's the most important piece, right? Most people can get through these forms. It's how we present your situation that's going to dictate the size of our discounts. Think of like having a great CPA, great accountant, right? We're going to be the ones negotiating with these colleges. We don't use that word. We use the word appealing, but we're going to be the one appealing, okay, to and with these colleges to get more money. It's arguably one of the things that we are best at. Once we get accepted into a college, you know, how do we go back and get more money from said college? Again, that is something that we are very, very good at. Our kind of rack rate, if you go on our website for underclassmen, $29.99 to hire us. It goes up to $34.99 when you're a senior in high school. We're running a special promotion tonight just for live attendees. Sign up tonight, you get 20% off. So you're getting $600 off if you want to, or what is that? 600 bucks off? Yeah. You know, thereabouts if you want to work with us. And it's from now. It doesn't matter if your kid's a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, from now until they're actually moving into their dorms, you know, after senior year of high school. Unlimited hours, you're working with one expert one-on-one through the entire process. Okay. You're not gonna, we don't discount it any more than that. And again, it's only at kind of rare promotions that will do it at this price point. You're going to hear us say this more than once. You got to start now. You have to start the process now. And I don't care if you're a freshman. Believe me, we're going to hit the ground running. If you're saying we don't care about the financial piece, we just want help with admissions, here's what it looks like. Now, most importantly, you get to work with Brian specifically. Okay, his roster is filled up a long time ago for class 2025. He will fill up in short order for the class 2026, no, without question. So especially if you're class 2026 and you're like, I want admissions help, and that guy seems to know what he's talking about, which he does, you're going to want to take advantage of it, especially again at this price point. So this includes everything Brian talked about. He's going to work one-on-one with your kid to build that list of schools, right? For all the reasons he talked about. And again, more on that academic fit. Obviously, we'll complement it with the financial piece, but that's going to be his focus, okay? Making sure that we're nailing that essay, making sure that we're nailing, again, when I say essays, okay, making sure that we're nailing the Common App and all of the supplements. Okay. This includes up to 20 hours of work with him one-on-one. For many families, especially if you're a junior, that's going to be sufficient. Okay. If it's not, Brian's going to be able to identify that early in the process and say, look, let's start with this and then we can bolt on a couple a la carte hours after. Or he might say, and this is rare, look, you should think about a more comprehensive unlimited hours package because you're applying to 10 Ivy League schools. There's going to end up being 31 essays, whatever. But for most people, we say start here, right? Start here. Again, you have to, if you want to work with Brian, you want to get in at this price point, this coupon code will expire at midnight Pacific time tonight. Now, for a lot of folks too, you're like, well, I need both of those things. I want financial aid help. I want admissions help, right? And so we have what we call our combo packages. And again, this is discounted in an incredibly meaningful way, right? Or whatever that is, 1,300 bucks off, 1,400 bucks off. You have unlimited help, right? With one-on-one financial aid expert from now until your kid moves into the dorm. And then you have Brian. And the way that I look at it is for the financial help, we're really working parent or parents, right? We're just grabbing the wheel there. Whereas the admissions help, Brian's really grabbing the wheel with the student, right? But he's going to be the one that's driving deadlines, and he already has even his sophomores are already on their month by month plan. And here's exactly what I need from you, holding them accountable with deliverables again, so you don't have to play that role from in terms of being their coach or tutor or whatever you want to call it. But also again, I think for most parents, you just don't have the same expertise, and it's a different ball game. It's just a different ball game than if you went to college. It's just a lot more. I don't know if sophisticated is the appropriate word, but I don't know, more challenging, I guess, more nuanced. And it's the nuance that is going to make or break getting in and getting the right scholarships and all of that. So if there's any interest, sign up tonight, okay, to lock in your deal. If you want, you can talk to me one-on-one tomorrow or Friday. If you didn't get a chance to talk to your spouse or maybe your ex-spouse, right? Maybe you're a split household family and you're like, hey, this feels right, but I need to talk to my ex. Lock it in, and then we can talk tomorrow or Friday. And if you decide, you know what, and we got some buyer's remorse, or that wasn't right for us, or my partner or my ex-partner didn't sign off, we'll give you a full refund, 100% refund, no questions asked. But at least take advantage of the discount. You can gut check it with me tomorrow. And again, if you're like, yeah, I want to work with Brian specifically, there's some urgency, discount aside, just because his roster fills up very, very quickly because he's very good at what he does. Um,
So I
so
put that link in the chat, and you can
yeah,
either use the QR code or you can actually click on the link.
yeah. So if I just do, I'll just do it right here. If I just click on this link and I say, yeah, sign me up for the combo here, and you can either do it monthly payments, right? That's important to mention. There's a little finance charge if you do it monthly, but if I just go to one-time payment, however I do it, and say I want to pay, and then what I'll do is I'll add my coupon code, was I think abbreviation for December 20. And boom, it'll apply right there. Take my $1,300 off, right? So again, right through, right through this kind of PDF link, you can either sign up again for the financial aid piece, or the admissions piece, or obviously both, the combo. Again, that's going to expire tonight. If you're like, look it, I'm a DIYer. I don't hire anybody to do anything, right? I change my own oil. I'm the one that paints my house when it's time for that. I'm the one that what you know who you are, right? You DIYers, and you would never hire any outside experts to guide you through anything. And this process falls under that. We have something for you too, okay? And this is our what we call our premium membership. Usually it's $25 to get started to get into the club. We extended our Black Friday deal, so it's $10 to get started. $9.99, and then it's $9.99 a month after that. Cancel anytime. What comes with that is you get the premium version of our software. So, this software, um, everybody gets a free version, but you can only put 3 schools in there. You don't get access to the search filters, like who's going to give me the most in financial aid, who's going to give me the most in scholarships. We have some supporting resources in there as well. Again, we have office hours every other week where you can show up to kind of a webinar like this, but it's just 2 of our experts. You get to ask your question. So if you are a DIYer, again, take advantage of that. You will not find this on our website. Okay, to join this if you just want to join this, and have the premium version of the software and all the other benefits of the club, and you just find us, on the internet, it'll cost you $149. So again, this is just a promotion for folks that show up live with us. And if you just want to dip your toe in the water, and again, you're a DIYer, sign up for that. Again, I know Peggy put the link in the chat here. But do something, right? That is always our theme here. Do something. Don't do nothing. Don't go back to your kind of lives and say, I'll worry about this later. At a minimum, just get in the club, right? If you're a DIYer, and we will take care of you that way. Go, it's a $10 risk, okay? Where you can go in there, see everything that's accessible. But if you're like, you know what, there's a lot at stake here, and I want to make sure that I maximize my odds of my kids getting into their top choices, and that they're applying to the right places, and it's as affordable as possible for me and my family, make the bigger investment here, right? I'm not trying to minimize the size of this investment. I get that it's very meaningful. But guess what? You're going to get a return on that investment in many ways, many times over. And again, when we're talking about colleges being $100,000 a year here, um, it's relatively speaking, it's a good deal, right? I mean, sometimes a lot of times people will say, I'd love to do this, but I can't afford, 23.99. But we just told you that your in-state state college is going to cost $40,000 and you're going to have to write that check, pretty soon. Make that more affordable, right? Make that more affordable, and you're going to be happy that you did so. It's good. You know what, Peggy? No, let me frame it this way. As a parent, that is a Christmas present you should get yourself. One of these. That's where you should be treating yourself. We don't like to spend money right now, but this is one that's going to last well beyond Christmas. Any parting words for you, Peggy, Brian?
No, I would
Just
just
want
say,
to,
the
yeah, go
process
ahead, Brian.
is more unique and convoluted than it's ever been before. And we don't say that as a way to be scary or to frighten. It's just more of to be aware and to be prepared and to know that I think Matt sums it up really well, and that these colleges are business and they have an operating process, and so it's our job to kind of help you weed your way through that process, and that's why we're here to help.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
100%.
it
Well
is.
said.
Yeah, it is very nuanced in our software on the financial side. It brings clarity to a very convoluted, murky scenario. And you don't know what you don't know. And we know it. We've been around the block. So we know how somebody just wrote in, how do you know about merit? Like we've looked at hundreds of thousands of award letters to say, how are these colleges awarding certain students? So that's what we have built into the software. What Brian knows, it's all up here, right? That's a hard one to put into software. People have tried. I've actually been asked to be involved in stuff like that. Very, very hard. There's certain things where you need somebody like Brian who's sat with tons and tons of kids and has been behind the curtain with Oz. He knows how the
Exactly.
crazy world works back
Knows
then.
what goes on back there. And yeah, and it's
I
wild.
think
We've
I
heard some.
think a wicked reference is a great place to end.
Yeah, there you go. And we just had another with the financial aid package. Just the distinction is a financial aid package. It's unlimited hours for that, and we do the financial aid applications for you. We do the FAFSA. We do the CSS profile. If it's a school like Princeton that has their own institutional application, we do that for you. Again, we worry about who needs what, where, when, how. The admissions piece, that package, which is I don't know, I guess lower tiered package for us, that admissions piece is capped at 20 hours. Okay. If you need more, Brian's going to be able to identify that early. Again, like I said, for most families, if you're a junior, that's going to be enough. If you're an underclassman, you might need some more. Or if you're a junior, like I said, it's applying to a bunch of really competitive colleges. That's where the it becomes more hours. But again, we're at a minimum, we're going to service that and can usually identify, hey, are you going to be somebody that needs more? But the financial aid, there's no limit on the hours. So, all right, guys, well, look at you as a very engaged audience. We appreciate it. Brian, as always, I'm learning more from you. Appreciate your time. And if we don't see you guys, we got plenty of work to do on this end before the holidays. So we're not going anywhere for a few weeks. If we don't see you before then, have an amazing, holidays, whatever you're celebrating. And yeah, look, at a bare minimum, if you don't do a comprehensive package, join the club. If you're not going to join the club, at least continue to pay attention to us, right? We're not going anywhere in terms of types of events like this. So just stay engaged no matter what in some capacity.